Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Automated Advantage. Today we have Sharon Wright on. Sharon, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us how you got started in this business? I know it's an interesting story.
Greg, thank you. I appreciate you having me. Yes, I am the president and founder of a firm outside of Washington, D.C. called Loud and Clear Marketing. And I got my start in a very interesting way. I did my first PR campaign when I was the ripe young age of 13. And some might ask, how did that happen? It's a great story, but I had heard a story on CNN about the American hostages that we had in Iran at the time in 1980 and how America had forgotten about the hostages. So I thought I need to do something to help this cause. And what we were doing back in 1980 was hanging yellow ribbons on mailboxes and trees. And I know that will strike a chord with many because any of us in this generation will remember that. It became a national movement. And when I looked at my little small suburb of Pittsburgh, I realized we didn't have many yellow ribbons that I could see. So I asked my pastor at the time if I could speak in front of the congregation. I don't know many pastors that would say no to a 13-year-old when they take that kind of initiative. And I stood in front of our congregation and I reminded them about these hostages and to pray. And so I took my babysitting money and I bought as many yellow ribbons as I could that I could afford, and I handed those out. And it felt really, really amazing when I started seeing those yellow ribbons showing up. And then I thought, I want to do this again. I want to do it more. So I spoke at 9 more churches over the next 9 weeks. It helps when you have a father who is as extroverted as his daughter. And so he was able to help with those introductions. And I think I must have had help with the financial piece of it in order to buy those ribbons. I couldn't do enough babysitting to support this campaign. And it wasn't then until I went off to college where I had the right counselor who helped me peel that onion back and show me that what I was doing was a public awareness campaign. Um, I, of course, would never take credit for starting it. It was well on its way, but it needed a little push in my little slice of the world. At the time I joined college, I had this counselor who helped me figure that out. I was attending a college that was strong liberal arts, but it was not known for public relations. So when I heard, this in this conversation that it was called public relations, I thought I have a real challenge before me because I'm at a school that's not known for public relations. But being the extrovert that I was already freshman class president. And this counselor said, well, Sharon, you can be the founder of the degree. If you take this approach, I'll show you how to build the program. I researched the top schools in the country. I built a 4-year degree that the curriculum board accepted. So it's quite the story. And then, of course, because I was researching everything I could about public relations since I knew that was what it was called. I decided I wanted to work for Hill and Knowlton. So I went from an unknown school that certainly the Hill and Knowltons of the world were not recruiting at, and I walked right into Hill and Knowlton. I did 6 internships during college so that I had an undeniable resume. It was no secret, to my final internship in Newport Beach, California, that was my aspiration. So I have had a wonderful career as a result of that start at the ripe young age of 13.
No, that's phenomenal. It's one of the best stories I've heard, and I did share this with you. When you asked me if I'd heard of the Yellow Ribbon, and my grandmother told me the story, so my grandfather was in World War II, and they had an oak tree in their backyard, and she tied a ribbon around it. And when we used to come and visit, she put one out there just because we were the last kids coming home to visit our grandma. So I was very familiar with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about what the media landscape looked like in 1980, we didn't have what we have today. There was certainly no social, right? It was newspaper, radio, television. We had very primitive sources as far as disseminating news. So this Yellow Ribbon campaign really became a movement It was a wonderful way to communicate a cause, and almost like what we would call guerrilla marketing today.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. But I mean, there's a couple of things come out of the conversation and that opening statement. I mean, we could talk about that for hours. But the other thing that struck me, and it didn't before, was the other thing about somebody shaping your life, right? Which is the counselor. You could have had a counselor who didn't care, who just wanted to go through the motions of get you in the school. I mean, there's somebody, maybe talk through that about somebody who truly influenced your life.
It's a fact. I did not have the right counselor in high school because if I had, Greg, we probably would have peeled that onion back. We would have, because it was certainly closer. When I did this, I was 13. My high school years led me till about age 17. Did not have the right counselor in high school. So that's why I chose a liberal arts college. When I got to and I have to give a shout out to my college, it's West Virginia Wesleyan College in Buckhannon, West Virginia. When I got there, I did have the right counselor, and I'll give him a shout out as well. His name is Bob Skinner. And ironically, and most, adoringly, Bob just retired a couple of years ago. Bob stayed at that wonderful university for all of the years. And you could tell from the moment I sat down with Bob and when he saw that spark in me telling this story about this campaign that I did, he cared and he was a huge influence in my life. And he would visit even, I saw Bob many times throughout the years, whether I was visiting the college or he was visiting the states that I was living in his role as development director. So it really makes a huge difference when there's somebody who takes an interest. And as a result of that, I have become that person to many young folks. I believe so strongly in helping to shape the passions of our youth. So I've been very, very active in our school district. I will mentor students in the high school levels to help them figure out what pathway to take, right? Whether it's a corporate direction or a very noble trade direction. And then most certainly I work with college students. I have a strong internship program at our company. In fact, Greg, you'll like this too from a communications perspective. I do an internship at my firm that I think is really, really important. I will expose the students to a couple of weeks at an agency environment. So that would be mine, a couple of weeks at a corporate environment, and a couple of weeks at a nonprofit. I've been blessed to have many of those types of clients across the spectrum. And my clients are always very agreeable as well. So they'll do maybe 2 or 3 weeks with me and then 2 or 3 weeks at each of the others. And at the end of the summer, we have quite a wonderful session to talk about what they liked the best and if they're going to go in the direction of the corporate environment or did they like the diversity of a busy agency day. So that's an internship program that I'm very proud of.
I love it. The whole pay it forward motion. I think there's a lot of that's being lost in the world today, and I think that's very
Yes.
noble, and I'm really excited to hear that.
Yeah, it will never be lost with me.
I love it. So talk about the company. Is it Loud and Clear? And I know there's a strong woman in business component to it. Just tell us a little bit about what you guys do, how, your client profile. Just talk about the company a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. There is a wonderful story, and it also dates back to the Wesleyan days. But I founded Loud and Clear Marketing. In fact, I named it Loudon Clear in 2012. That's the name of the county where we're based. That worked for some years until we grew well beyond our borders, and we knew that the name Loudon, which is often mispronounced in various parts of the country, the name Loudon wouldn't work. So we transitioned to Loud and Clear. Again, a perk, I guess, of going to a small school. I went back for a college reunion in 2015 and rekindled with a lovely woman named Deb Haynes Swider, who went to my college. And we sat together at homecoming weekend only to learn that we were running in parallel tracks. I was always the public relations person of the partnership, but she was the public affairs, the messaging, the branding. And so we started realizing that we had something here. So Deb joined Loud and Clear Marketing in 2019. We have branded presidential candidates. We have done some of the most important nonprofit work. We are trying to make a change in affordable housing in our part of the world. And right now, we're very proud of the work we do with data centers. It is a very important conversation that needs to take place. Um, as we know, with the explosion of the AI world, there is so much data being consumed. When you think about even in your home alone, how many devices rely on the internet? Again, we go back to the story about the youth. We do a job shadowing day in the fall, and I went around the room with, I had about 20 students, went around the room and had them just take with a piece of paper and write down all of the devices that they have in a single home. And one young lady came up with 91 because we're trying, think about everything that we have. Our ovens are automated in some of our homes, our refrigerators, our Ring camera devices. Then you talk about the number of children in the house, and there's the iPads and the cell phones. I mean, I could go on, but data is a critical piece of our life. And our firm is proud to work with some of the largest data centers in the world to help them shape their message and help them talk about the good they're doing, defining the narrative on what they're doing to come into communities and make a real difference. So I'm very proud of that.
And I think that's a really important component because it's what I find interesting, and it takes two angles to it, and I will touch on the data center angle. Is my kids are in their mid to late 20s, and um, they're almost anti-AI in the sense of two things. My daughter and her roommate said, "Well, I like to use my own brain," and the second one was the perceived environmental impact. It's kind of talking through that. So maybe just take us through a little bit of that conversation as it relates to the good that they are doing. And yes, it's running, pulling power. Yes, it's leveraging water, but there's a big but.
There's a lot of good that they're doing, and you're so right to talk about the AI fatigue that we're all experiencing. AI has come into our lives like a bull, right? A bull in a china shop. And our heads are spinning in many ways. We're trying to grasp what it is and how it's impacting our lives. Think about many of the students that are in school right now that are trying to decide if the careers that they've chosen are AI proof, right? So I can't, I'm not surprised at all that some of these young folks, like I have kids also in the young 20s who are also experiencing some AI fatigue. So, um, when we talk though about like what the good is that they're doing, these data centers will come into a community and say, what do you need? What is it that your community needs to thrive? I heard a story just last week, from, and I'll use this term lightly, but there's a gentleman here in Loudoun County who is referred to as the godfather of the data center industry. He told a story about a community in West Virginia who needed an ambulance. So that was an easy lift for the data center to come in and purchase for them a brand new state of the art ambulance. There are communities who need roads. There are communities who need money for their schools. In Loudoun County, there was a surplus of money that our district was able to give back to the government at the end, and that was because of the support and I mean, think again, we talked about whether a student is going in the corporate direction or the trades. There are pathways to technology types of programs that the data centers are rolling out to create jobs. There's like a a myth out there that there are very few jobs with the data centers, but that's not always the case. There are plenty of great jobs, as well as the jobs that run parallel to a data center. If you think about the impact to a community when a data center is coming, it's the construction, it's the all of the services that a data center needs. So it really can be a wonderful thing for a community.
Yeah, and it's you made me think of something there too, which is it's telling the narrative, right? It's bringing that to them because I know, again, my children, I use them as a reference all the time. Two distinctly different kids, one in the military and one borderline hippie, and and each of them consumes the news in such a different way. And then I'm going to use the words, they believe what they want to believe, right? It's like, and so if you're pushing up in my daughter's feed, data centers are bad. They're killing the economy. They're killing the environment. That's what she believes, and that's what she tells her friends. Or where my son, who's able to, think through some things, he has a different perspective. But I like the aspect of let's get the real story out there. Let's get the facts behind it, and
That's
let's
right.
let you make your own decision.
Yeah, there's a lot of positive. There's a lot of myths in this space, and I definitely will not open that can of worms in this conversation because we would be here all day, like you said. But there are a lot of things that need to be pushed out about the good that they do, and that's where we come in.
Yeah. So moving and so the firm that you've started, and as we talked about, women in business and you and your partner, and um, in the years that you've been doing this, I've got to believe that I mean, AI, we talk about the AI changing the world, but you starting out at a ripe young age and then being very young when you started your business, I got to believe the world has changed. So maybe talk a little bit about the acceptance of women in business and where how you've seen things shift, if you have, and maybe you haven't.
Sure. There was a whole chapter there in the middle that I didn't talk about, but when I left school, I started at Hill and Knowlton, and I stayed there in two different offices, a U.S. office and an overseas office for the first 5 years, and then I went corporate for 5 years to experience that. I would say that I have seen a really wonderful change. Are we there completely? No, we're not, but we certainly. Um, are finding a voice and we're finding a place to be at the table, and I'm proud of that. There are so many wonderful groups that I encourage young women to join. There are networking opportunities. There's really a lot of wonderful things that young women starting out in the business can take advantage of, and I certainly find a seat for myself at the tables, that I need to be at as well. So,
And that's the thing too, is I've my some of my best employees ever and people I've worked with have been women. And the thing with all of that is I think it's to be confident, you're smart. You don't have to feel like you're being intimidated. If you have logical thoughts or like real thoughts, and you're a smart individual and you can contribute to a conversation, I mean, just be yourself, and I think that gets you
of
through a
course.
lot.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, and my style is such that I'm big on reading the room. I'll never come in and start talking before I've assessed what is happening in the space. So that's advice that I think is very important for any young people starting out in the work world. Is whether you're reading a corporate room or you're reading a workplace room. As an electrician coming into a company, read the room. Like take a pulse of what's happening before you come in and barrel through. I think listening is so underrated that people so often have in their heads what they want to say, and they're not always as quick to listen and learn first.
I like that, and that's true for anybody, men, women, everybody. Take advice of that. So now talk a little bit about the company, and you talked about helping nonprofits, and you talked about the data centers and things like that. But that if somebody, maybe this is not the commercial aspect of it, but if somebody is looking for fill in the blanks, this is kind of what you do and how you help them out.
You mean if it's like a new a
Yeah,
company?
like a client who's looking for something
Yeah,
and say, hey, if you fit this profile, this is how we help people in general.
yeah. We're looking for the companies that understand that they need marketing. They understand the importance of getting their messages right. So it's the companies that have been in their spaces for some time, and they are looking for wise, thoughtful, strategic counsel. What I love about our firm is that with Deb and I at the helm, we come from both sides of the world of public relations, and I'm the epitome of that because I love all of the things that make up public relations, and then thought leadership, the right messaging. It's just a fantastic dynamic between us to be able to bring that to the table. Deb is also a practicing lawyer, so we bring that edge as well. So it's for those thoughtful companies that know they need help with thought leadership or with message development. And certainly in the data center space, we're well beyond the point where we think they need help. We know they need help, and this is where a firm like ours, who is headquartered in Data Center Alley, which is what they call Ashburn, Virginia, we are headquartered there. So we have been eating, sleeping, drinking this topic for. It's been around for over 20 years, but we've been playing in this realm just under that. So we are uniquely qualified. And like I mentioned earlier, we touch the important issues of our county as well in Loudoun County, which some have referred to. We've been ranked as um, the richest county in the country. We have an affordable housing crisis here. And so we have been at the forefront of those campaigns as well. And that is not an easy fight. That's a long process, but we're getting the topic elevated to the tops of the ballots for all of the politicians, and we're continuing to push that message forward.
I love it. It's such a, I thought Orange County I live in isn't the most expensive, but I know that there's a couple of them out there that are up
They
there in
are
the,
indeed. Yes.
so so rewinding just a little bit, and so somebody sitting out there now, young person, older person like me, doesn't matter, said, hey, you know what, I think I want to start my own business. What advice do you have for those people? What, two, three lessons learned and maybe two or three must do's?
Oh, this would have been a good one for me to think through a little bit. I think my best advice is to follow your gut. When you feel like you have cut your teeth, because I would recommend that. I would say go out and cut your teeth first in your industry, whatever that is. Get those experiences, make the mistakes. We all make mistakes, we all learn by doing. So I would say to someone, go out and cut your teeth, have your experiences, learn what has worked and what hasn't, and then when you're ready to give it a shot, like just jump in and do it. From a perspective of how do you get started? I'm a huge advocate for chambers of commerces. I happen to be from a county where we have a 5-star accredited chamber. A little plug there. I've been on the board for 7 years, so I'm an advocate. But when I decided, I was sort of, like I mentioned, this sort of trajectory that I had. When I was ready to really jump into this market, no one knew me when I first arrived here. The first thing I did was join the chamber. And again, I'm not an introvert, so I made sure that I met people. You can't join an organization like that and not be in, like, not put yourself out there. So I would say, step out of your comfort zone, because sometimes that's required. Um, and I even did my very first effort with the chamber. I was at one of these lead share groups, which is like a 30-person group, and one of the members of our group was having a grand opening that night. And I right away jumped in and said, "Have you contacted the media? Did you send out an advisory?" They hadn't done any of those things. So I did it for free because I could do it with my eyes closed. I did it. It was nothing for me to just quickly put those things together. I showed up at his event and I took pictures that I attached to my release. And that was huge for me because then suddenly people saw, wow, she's the real deal. And she was willing to just jump in and do it. Sometimes you have to, people need to know, like, and trust you before they want to do business with you. So that came so organically to me because it was a news opportunity and I couldn't let that man, have his event without taking advantage of that opportunity. So
Yeah. Oh,
that
that's
was sort
great
of
advice.
a lot of things in one.
Yeah, no, but that's great advice, and I think that that's it's all well rounded in doing that. I think you're right. Just go and do it. Be mindful of what you're doing. Be authentic to yourself.
That's
And
right.
I think the Chamber of Commerce thing is I actually just did a webinar for one of our local chambers, and it's you'd be surprised how much people are starving for information
I
and
really am.
and just fresh thoughts, right? So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a wonderful group of folks. So
Well, this was very intriguing. The yellow ribbon story was phenomenal. The how you got started, I think, is very unique, and I'm very excited to get this out for people to see. So, again, we've talked about tell us your website, finding you on LinkedIn, ways to get in touch with you.
sure thing. So our website is loudandclear.today. And my LinkedIn is Sharon L. Wright, which I'm sure you'll have in the notes from this. And I'd love to be, able to connect with anybody that wants to hit a follow.
That's
And Greg, I
amazing.
really appreciate you inviting me to do the podcast, and I thank you for letting me tell my story.
That was my pleasure. I think this is going to be a big hit. So, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.